Welcome to On the Way, a podcast about life. But not just any life, it's about life with Jesus. Why do people follow Jesus, and how do they get started? And what difference does following Jesus make in their lives? Before Christians had a name, they were known as people of the way, people who followed Jesus' teachings. People have been on the way for nearly 2,000 years now. During the podcast, we explore the ways that people become followers of Jesus and why, and what difference following Jesus makes in their lives. On the Way is produced by the Baptist Standard, a donor-supported provider of news, opinion, and resources for living like Jesus. I'm Eric Black, editor of the Baptist Standard. I'm glad you're with us today. We have with us today Jesse Joyner. He's a Christian performer. He's performed all over the country. A lot of Christian camps during the summer, except for this last summer. He stays pretty booked. He had to adjust his schedule a little bit this last summer. I think that probably goes without saying, unless you're listening to this 1,000 years from now and you don't know that 2020 is kind of a big deal. So, Jesse, we are so glad that you are with us today.
Thank you, Eric.
Well, Jesse, as you know, we've talked a little bit about this. The focus of our podcast is how you became a follower of Jesus and what difference following Jesus makes in your life. So before we do that, though, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you are and what you're doing, and then we'll jump into those questions.
Sure. So I consider myself a performing juggler. That's my main gig in life. And before, during, and after COVID, I still see myself as that. It just looks a little different during COVID. But I'm also on the side working on a PhD in educational studies. And I'm able to thankfully incorporate a lot of what I do in my juggling show. I'm able to incorporate what I learned from that into my PhD program and vice versa. So the two kind of work together. I guess you could say I'm a bit of a creative nerd with things like juggling and circus tricks, but I'm also an academic nerd. Does that make me a double nerd? I guess I'm a double nerd.
Maybe.
Yeah. So, and I try to bring those two worlds together. There's actually a term for it. It's called circademics.
There you go, circademics. Okay, we've learned something today.
You can call me a circademician.
Okay.
Circademician, something like that.
Is that like Cirque du Soleil?
Yeah, kind of.
Kind of, okay. Okay.
All right. So you do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and some academics.
Sure.
A little bit of that too.
Yes.
Okay, a circademician. All right. Well, so circademician. See what I did there? Yeah. Jesse and I have known each other for a few years, and our brand of humor when we get together and when he's on stage is maybe not what you're used to. It's the kind of humor that finds a word like circademician funny. So there you go.
Dry as the desert. Yes.
That's right. Okay, so I can hear the laughter. We'll insert a laugh track or something. All right. Well, Jesse, how did you become a follower of Jesus?
So I'll start before I became a follower, of course. I'm a pastor's kid. So I grew up in a churched home, a churched family. And my father was studying seminary and Bible college in my early years of life. And then he went on into pastoring as I was a elementary school age kid. And I lived that life where most things were good for me. I was blessed. It was a pretty happy childhood, and they took good care of us, and they loved on us. But I was always the kid that everybody at church or everybody around me, they just thought I was a good kid or thought I was a perfect kid just because I'm the pastor's kid. In fact, I can remember a parent or two of my peers like wanting their child to invite me over for a play date or a sleepover or whatever, just because I was the pastor's kid. Kind of like you need to hang out with the good kids, you need to hang out. And, not for who I was, but just because I was a pastor's kid. So you kind of grow up as a pastor's kid with that kind of identity crisis sometimes. Like, who am I? And so what I'm getting at is, I thought that by being a pastor's kid, for me personally, as a 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old, I thought that meant I was just a, automatic Christian, right? Like I was just, you get your ticket.
I mean, all the boxes are checked.
Exactly. You get your ticket stamped just automatically, just by having a father who's a pastor. You don't have to go through what the normal route that other people take of actually being convicted of their sin and repenting and putting their faith in Jesus. Like
what sin? I mean, if you're a PK, you don't have sin.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So I was at a youth retreat because, of course, we go on youth retreats as kids growing up in the church. So I go on this youth retreat. I was 13, right before starting high school, and it was the summer before high school started. And I go to this retreat, and it's a week-long retreat. It's in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. They bring in the evangelist, and he speaks each night. After we play at the beach, and then we come in for the evening worship services. And I just sat in the back row because, again, I'm the pastor's kid. I don't need to learn anything new. I'm just I'm set, right? So I just sat in the back and tried to pass the time. And I'm folding my arms because that was my attitude. I don't know if I physically was doing that week, but it was my attitude. It was like, I'm all good. But that week, somehow the messages were slowly sinking in, and it was the gospel message. It was the message that God made you. You have fallen away from God in your sin, and you need Jesus. You need to come to Jesus. Like it was the basic gospel message. And I could feel throughout the week, now I know what to call it, conviction. Like I was feeling conviction. And by the last night when this evangelist was giving the traditional evangelist invitation, like come down and confess you're a sinner and give your life to Jesus, I could sense in my own spirit and body, I could feel like my heart pounding and my head pulsating, that I needed to come down and give my life to Jesus. Because by then I was 11, 12, 13 years old. As a middle school kid, you're exposed to a lot of darkness in the world, and I was living in sin, but didn't want to really admit it or show it to anybody in the world around me. So,
and this was a new feeling for you, this sort of whole body sense, yeah.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I knew when the evangelist was giving a call to repent and put your faith in Jesus. I knew that was me. I knew that he was talking to me. But I resisted. Like I sat there and I didn't come down. I just sat in my chair and just nervous. And here's why I was nervous. I didn't want to admit to my friends and peers that I needed help or that I needed Jesus because I was the pastor's kid. Right.
Yep. That's right.
So then the evangelist did this, and I mean, he gave the there's still more people out there that need to come down second invitation.
Boy. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, anybody watching or listening who's grown up in the church knows about these kinds of things. And then he gave a third. There are still more people out there that need to come down. Like he was just, extending the invitations over and over again. Wasn't giving up. And I kept resisting, but each time I knew that it wasn't the evangelist. I knew that it was the Holy Spirit was calling me and convicting me to come forward and follow Jesus. So on that third time, the evangelist didn't. The evangelist said there's still two more people that need to come down front. Like he's now counting down to like the last two people.
Yeah.
This is the fourth.
No, I'm sorry, the third time.
This is the third time. Okay.
Invitation, general. Second invitation, there's still more people. Third invitation, there's two of you out there that haven't come down yet. It's probably 40 or 50 of us in this room. And then he pointed at one girl over there, like on the other side of the room. And then he took his finger and he pointed right at me. Like he pointed at me. He said, you son need to come down front right now. I'm laughing.
How's that for conviction?
No, I'm laughing because, some people could take that the wrong way and say that the guy was manipulative or was, just trying to, I don't know, manipulate me or something. But I know he wasn't, because not for me personally, I already knew that Jesus was calling me. It wasn't, I didn't feel like I was being forced against my will or manipulated against my will to come down front. It's like he was obedient to the Holy Spirit, and I needed to be too. So I came down. When he pointed at me, I was like, okay, well, this is God calling me, you know. So I came down and I prayed, and it was that simple prayer, like, I'm sorry, Jesus, for my sin. I received your forgiveness. I want to follow you with my life. And it really was a moment of shedding the weight of sin and feeling that freedom. And whenever I read that verse in the Bible, like, restore to me the joy of my salvation, like, I think about that joy I felt initially, and just praying that God will continue to fill me with that joy throughout my life, and even greater joy. And he does. I mean, he's been faithful. And since that moment, it's been, you know, the journey of a believer, the pilgrim of a Christian. I'm still not perfect. I never will be, but I know the one who is perfect, and I want to ask for his grace and help to follow him every day. So, yeah.
We're going to take a sponsor break, and we'll be right back.
Since 1952, South Texas Children's Home Ministries has focused on healing hearts and sharing hope. Their 9 ministries focus on helping hurting children and families, all regardless of an individual's ability to pay. To find out more, visit www.stchm.org.
So from that point on, how did being a follower of Jesus, what difference does that make in your life?
Yeah. Like I said, it's a journey. Yeah. So shortly after that, a couple years later, I felt what people would call a call to ministry. Didn't know what that was going to exactly look like at the time, of course, but I felt like God was calling me to some sort or type of ministry, which, by the way, I've since felt like God has expanded my understanding of what ministry means. Especially if you think about, like, the life of a juggler, you know, like, I now believe that God really can use pretty much anything, you know, to be considered ministry in this world. You know, there's probably a lot of Christians out there that they're doing ministry, they just don't know it, you know, if they're living out their faith in their job or their workplace. So I felt that call to ministry in high school, and then I went on to Bible college to study Bible, because I was thinking maybe this is going to be, I'll be a pastor like my dad. And then I continued on to seminary and got the Master of Divinity, you know, just kind of went through those steps that a lot of people following the pastorate do. And then at the end of seminary, I kind of had these two paths I could have taken. One was the traditional role of a pastor that stands behind a pulpit and preaches to people. And then the other was this thing that was going on in my life that I was learning all along, and that was called juggling. Like, I had gotten into juggling as like a big deal in my life, going to conventions and competing. And
so this is not just something you were doing like in your bedroom or your backyard.
Well, I started there in my bedroom and backyard, but it quickly turned into the stage and you know, paid gigs, because I was good at it. It was like a lot of things I wasn't good at, football, basketball. Like, I wasn't the big tough kid. But once I found juggling, I found this really weird talent that I somehow, for some reason, was good at, and I just really latched onto it. So I chased that and kept getting better and better, to the point that people invited me and paid me, you know, to go do shows for them, and I enjoyed it. So that was always something I was doing on the side, even through college and seminary. Like, I'm studying for ministry, but I'm doing these like juggling shows on the weekends. And during that time, I actually started using my juggling shows as like ministry shows, where like churches would invite me or youth groups would invite me to do a show, but they wanted me to evangelize or teach the gospel story while I was doing it. And I met some other jugglers in the juggling world that were also believers, that also like used it in an evangelistic sense. And I learned from them, and I started putting together a program that did that very thing. And so what difference does it make? Well, it made a big difference in that my faith provided a great deal of content and meaning to the actual show itself. Like oftentimes it was an explicit story of the Bible that I was teaching, using juggling as an object lesson. I've since learned and grown, I felt, especially in my studies that I'm doing now, that I don't want to merely use juggling as like some sort of utilitarian tool, just to, tell a story or teach a message necessarily. Like I also want to express juggling for what it is, like as an expression of art, as an expression of bringing joy to other humans on this earth, whether or not there's some explicit story to go along with it. And like there's a variety of ways that you can express it. And I feel like God is even expanding my view on how we can do that. So my juggling, in some ways, it's also I believe it's an act of worship. When you juggle, you're looking up, like you're looking up to the sky, and when you're balancing things, you're looking up, and it takes a lot of focus and attention. And like Eric Liddell says in Chariots of Fire, the Chariots of Fire movie based on the story of Eric Liddell.
Well, I'm sure it's 100% accurate.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Like when I run, I feel the Lord's pleasure. That famous line. I don't even know if I'm getting the exact words right. But when I juggle, I feel the Lord's pleasure. And so for me, it's an act of worship to Him. It's an act of service to others, of serving them. Yeah, I might say verbal words that meet spiritual needs, like maybe the gospel story is being preached. But I also hope that the juggling can meet human needs of bringing joy and laughter and happiness and distraction, from the cares of the world. And there's so many things. Juggling is used in hospitals and prisons and migrant camps. I mean, there's so many ways you can use juggling to just bring joy and happiness to the world. And that's one way that I express who I am, hopefully in worship to the Lord and in service to others.
How long have you been juggling?
29 years.
Wow.
I had to do math.
Yeah, I was going to let you do the math. Yeah,
I'm getting old enough that I have to stop and do the math. 29 years. Yeah, I learned when I was 11. So now you know how old I am.
Yeah. Well, why don't you just go ahead and tell us?
40.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's right. But I can do that too because I'm 45.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
We're going to take a 60-second sponsor break, and we'll be right back. High Ground Advisors has a 90-year history of providing investment management and planned giving solutions to churches, faith-based organizations, and charitably minded individuals dedicated to transforming lives. High Ground is trusted by over 450 nonprofit clients, and we're one of them. High Ground has partnered with Baptist Standard for over 70 years by offering a comprehensive charitable giving and investment solutions model, which includes asset management, planned giving education and development, account support services, real estate and minerals management, and expert legal consultation. High Ground and the Baptist Standard share similar values, such as serving those who are called and dedicated to transforming lives and being a trusted caretaker of legacies. They also value good stewardship, helping those who desire to be good stewards of their financial resources to find creative giving solutions to fulfill that calling. They know what they do to protect, strengthen, and grow our mission is ultimately in service to the gospel. To learn more about how High Ground Advisors can partner with you or your organization, visit their website at highgroundadvisors.org. So you spend a lot of time performing and on the stage, or this year in front of a camera. Is it hard to come off the stage?
Are you talking about 2020, like COVID? Is it hard to take that 10-month break from performing, or do you mean just any time?
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah. So I guess there's really two questions there, depending on what the focus is. So let's do 2020 second. First, I'm curious about, as a performer, this is what you do, and it just sort of comes out of you. is there a time when you don't feel like you're performing, where you've sort of set that aside and you've turned the performer off, and you're relating to people in a different way? Or do you have a sense of that?
When I step down from the stage, there is sometimes a variety of emotions. It can be lonely to get down off the stage, because when you're on the stage, you're the center of attention. Everybody's cheering for you and loving you. And then you step off the stage. And if I'm on the road by myself, it's like I go back to this lonely hotel room, and it just silence, like it all stops, just like that, like you disappeared or something. And so that can be a lonely place. For me personally, I am kind of half introvert, half extrovert. So there is a part of me that does gain from the quietness, but I also gain from being on stage as well. But what am I trying to say?
Well, let me fill in a little bit, because having been a pastor and somebody who is up in front of people one day a week, as a performer, when you get up in front of people, this is the only time that a lot of people see you, and they don't know you any other way. And it's like, when you're a little kid and you see your teacher in the classroom, and then you see your teacher at the grocery store, and it's like, what are you doing here? You eat too, you go to the grocery store. So I think that a lot of people don't really have a sense of a performer or a pastor being a human being. And in other words, that all you are is a performer. But from the introduction, you've already told us that you're a lot more than a performer.
Okay, something just came to mind that I think might help what you're asking, help me answer what you're asking. I think it can go both ways. When I'm on the stage, I actually need to learn how to be more relatable sometimes to the audience. Like, I need to do my show and be the kind of person on stage that they can relate to. And sometimes I get a little bit too stuck up about it, or I'm too serious about myself, and I think, oh, look at me, I'm the big one on stage, and look at all these lowly people down here, like that, and which is a bad thought, by the way. But that I believe a better response to that, if I feel that temptation coming on, is to try to be a relatable person and show them that I am a human being, just like them. And I'm not a superhuman. I'm just a normal guy that has this little weird talent. And there's a lot of things I can't do in life that maybe they can. And this is just a gift I want to share with them. So that always helps me. Now, what I'm getting to is the opposite happens. Like, when I'm at home with my family, I have a beautiful wife, and 3 beautiful children. And which, by the way, we spent more time together as a family during COVID than any other year of our life as a family, which that's been a blessing in disguise. And when I'm at home with my kids, sometimes I turn it off too much. I'm like, oh, I'm not performing, I'm not a show right now. And so it can be really easy to just be the lazy parent and just sit there on the couch and just try to make sure the kids don't kill each other. And because we have little kids right now. We have like a 1-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 10-year-old, and it's a great time of life. They're growing up, but for anyone who's had children, especially having a 1 and a 3-year-old, it's challenging. You're changing diapers, potty training, trying to make sure they don't tip over and get in fights, and I've realized that if I sit back and try to relax too much, like, oh, I'm not out performing, I'm not doing shows, I can just relax on my couch. If I do that too much, that's not helpful for my kids. And sometimes I'm reminded, it's like God reminding me, hey, you're a juggler. Like, you do this for a living. Like, you're good at this. You're good at capturing the hearts and attention of children. Like, you're a professional at this, actually. And
you're a circuit of mission.
Yeah, I'm a circuit of mission. And so when the Lord reminds me of that when I'm at home, tempted to turn it all off, I'm like, yeah. And I get up and I go find something to juggle, not for a show, like not to put on an act for my kids, but to just be myself, because that's who God made me to be. Or maybe I pick up a ball and I just toss it back and forth with my son David, who's 1.5 right now. That playfulness of being like a children's performer, or a juggler, or like just doing something playful with my kids, which really any adult can do in this world, obviously. But it's something that God has gifted me with, and it's easy to turn it off when I'm not performing, when really I need to tap into that and turn it on. And I found that when I do, it's actually, it helps me be a better parent. When I just allow myself to use that gift that God has given me, in the way that I even interact with my children. I mean, who wouldn't want like a juggler as their dad? Well, am I talking too proudly of myself to say it that way?
I don't know. I'm trying to think about what it would have been like to have a juggler for a dad. Yeah.
I want to be that. I want to let that be a gift to my kids and not hide it. And it's always worked in my favor if I just be myself around my kids and be that person that God has made me. Not in a fake way. Not like, hey kids, welcome to the Jesse the Juggler show. Like I don't do that with my own kids, but I try to be playful with them, and that's always better than just sitting back and trying to relax and say, I'm not on my show right now.
So what I'm hearing is it's not an on-off thing. It's a context thing, and it's also a personal integrity thing of being, this is kind of a trite phrase these days, but being true to who God has made you to be, and using that the way it's intended to be used in a show, and using that the way it's intended to be used with your family.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. It's kind of just being who God has made me to be. Yeah. And being that same person. Yeah. Whether I'm at home or whether I'm on stage. And, some people take on a completely other character, when they're on stage, and that's fine. That might be their art and their craft and what they've worked on all their years. Mine, the way I do it is less of that. It's more of, I am Jesse the juggler, when I come up on stage, and I'm Jesse the father when I'm at home. And so it's still Jesse. That's just me.
So how has COVID been for you as a performer? And you're not the only performer. I know you stay in touch with others. Here again, for those of us who don't live that life, we see performers in one place, and when they're not there, it's like out of sight, out of mind. But it doesn't mean that, you've disappeared or whatever. So what has that been like to be a performer and to have to perform differently or in a different venue, or I don't know?
Well, it's been hard. It's been hard on, I believe, performers, artists, people in the performing arts, all over the place. And it's been a learning experience and a learning curve for someone like myself.
So how has the last 10 months or however long it's been now, how has that been for you as a performer?
Yeah. So I don't know a performer who has not been affected by COVID. It's pretty much a universal experience, even as all of us humans. But for performers, especially those in the live performing arts, it's been super difficult. I mean, some people already have a presence doing filmmaking or online content, and they can keep going with that. But a lot of other performers or artists, their bread and butter is live shows, like live in-person shows. And for that to be shut down more or less for 10 months, it's been devastating. And not only economically, like, and that's, it's more than the economics of it. I think it's about the spirit of who we are, and not being able to share our gifts that we've been given in the way that we're used to sharing them.
Yeah.
It's something to lament. It's okay to be sad about that. That's what I want to tell other artists too, is that, let's not lie to ourselves and paint a rosy picture and say it's all going to work out. It's all going to be fine. Don't worry. Just stay positive. I think it's okay to lament it. It's okay to cry out and say, this is sad. This is a loss. This has created a lot of grief and loss for the expression of who we are. Now, of course, that has forced us into coming up with creative ways to continue to share our art and our craft. And a lot of people are doing that, whether it's making online content or doing virtual shows on the internet, or going outside and doing parades and socially distanced presentations and programs, which I've done. I've been able to be a part of some of those things over the past 10 months, a parking lot show, where the cars come and they park and they're spaced out, and I'm spaced out from the kids, and I still do my thing. And I must say, the times I've been able to actually get outside and do a live show for live people during COVID with people spread out, right? They've been life-giving, super life-giving, because I'm realizing in those shows and in those moments that we as humans need this. We need this kind of stuff. And it's given me platforms to continue to share what gifts God has given me. And that means so much to me, and I hope it means so much to other people as well.
One of the things you've done that I didn't know you had this in you, but you've been playing the piano and singing on Facebook Live. Yeah, and it's like, you got to be kidding me. He plays the piano too? And he plays really well. And you're a great singer, yeah. So, I mean, that's been a way that you have blessed people and brought smile and joy and a moment of peace to some people through this also.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's been fun doing the piano dance parties is what I called it. I did a lot of those earlier in COVID, and just playing the piano live, taking requests and trying to make some music. But another thing that I did, and this is something my local church asked me to do, which again, this was huge. When COVID hit, my pastor, because he knows who I am, like he knows that I'm a juggler and that I travel, and this is what I do. He came up to me at COVID. I didn't ask him for this. He said, I know, things are shutting down for you. Would you be willing to help out our church and to make some video content for kids and families, And it was just, I just felt so blessed that he even asked, and that he wanted to give me an outlet to use my gifts and to create something that would be of service to others. And that turned into this thing called Eternity Kids Club. And we have now made, can I make a plug for that? I mean, it's called Eternity Kids Club. There's a YouTube channel. It's called Eternity Kids Club. Our church is Eternity Church. And we made 51 episodes, anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes each, maybe 40 minutes, some of them. And it's 51 episodes of, Bible stories, Bible songs. Yeah, I'm playing the piano. There's puppets. There's juggling. There's magic tricks. And my family is involved, and we threw in a little bit of everything, and that kept me pretty busy throughout the 10 months of COVID. But it was
to produce 51 shows. That takes a lot of time.
Yeah, but
we see the finished product, but it takes a lot more time behind or ahead of the finished product. Yeah, go ahead.
And I wouldn't call it Hollywood level, of course, of production.
It doesn't matter.
Level, but
it still takes time.
But we had fun with it. We taught stories. We did flannel graphs. Like I did a flannel graph, Bible teaching. It was great. We found the old flannel graphs at the church, and
they still had them.
Yeah, they still had them. It was amazing.
Okay.
Yeah. So we made those, and that was just a lot of fun to put together something that the artist can still do things in COVID, and it looks differently, and we're still waiting it out. And I can't wait to get back to, doing more live shows again, because there really is something different about that, I believe.
Yeah.
So Eternity Kids Club.
Trinity Kids Club. So I want to ask one last question as we wrap up. And it's to kind of come full circle back to the beginning of the podcast, and to ask that in the midst of the challenge for you as a performer and other performers, what difference has following Jesus made for you right now?
He's my rock and my salvation. He's the, right when COVID hit, we made an Eternity Kids Club episode about Jesus calming the storm. And that, that story took on a whole new meaning, right? In the heat of March and April, of this storm all around us. And Jesus looked at it and he said, peace, be still. And he it's like he commanded it. He spoke. In fact,
there was no option really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's the Lord of all creation. He made the heavens and the earth, and so it has to do what he says. And the disciples were the ones freaking out. They were freaking out on the boat. Jesus was asleep. He was asleep. They had to wake him up, to get help. And so we have and with Christmas coming up, I wrote a poem once that actually kind of makes this connection between Advent and the calming of the storm. It's called Sleep in Heavenly Peace. There's Jesus sleeping on the boat like a baby, right? He's sleeping like a baby. And he came to us as a baby, this peaceful child that is perfect peace. And that's who he is. And when all the storm is raging all around, we're the ones freaking out, not him. He's not freaking out. He's at perfect peace. And we are the ones who have to go to him and even arouse him, to help us out because he's that peaceful about it.
Yeah, he's so unconcerned.
Yeah, so unconcerned. And they wake him up. Still, they're not antagonized. They're drilling Jesus. They're like, Jesus, aren't you worried about this? We're going to drown and die. What's wrong with you? Why are you so calm? And he looks out at the storm, and I can just see him holding out his arms like this and just being like, peace, be still. And it was just quiet. And so that's my prayer for myself and for the world through COVID, is that we would stop freaking out and look to the one who's sleeping on the boat, look to our perfect peace for him to calm the storm. And it's okay to freak out. I mean, it's a very human response. It's not like it's sinful or bad. So we can express that. They did to him, they expressed it to him. Yeah. But I find my comfort and salvation and anchor and foundation and peace and everything in him through COVID and him alone. And that's everything.
Yeah.
So, come Lord Jesus.
Yes. Oh, Jesse, thank you so much for being with us today.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you're using your gifts.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah,
I'm glad you're so gifted.
Thank you.
Just because a person follows Jesus doesn't mean that person is perfect. Following Jesus is a lifetime of growing more like him. Likewise, while there are followers who are more mature than others, who have spent more time growing close to Jesus than other followers, there are no followers of Jesus who are better than others. If you aren't on the way with Jesus, we invite you to check out the Follow Jesus page on the Baptist Standard website at baptiststandard.com/Follow Jesus to learn more about becoming a follower of him. If you are on the way with Jesus, we hope that this podcast has encouraged you to grow more like him. I'm Eric Black, editor of the Baptist Standard, and I'm glad you've been with us today.